Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to our King's channel. And I have to apologize because personally to me, I don't know the difference between a Democrat or a Republican. I see no difference whatsoever between them. On both sides you have pedophiles. On both sides you got criminals. They all fight for the same purpose, but even in their definitions for these things, I still don't understand the difference between a Democrat and politician. It's sort of like a church on a corner somewhere, where into the church goes a carpenter, you got a plumber, you got the mayor, you got some police officers or whatever, you got social service workers, you got hookers, you got drug addicts and those seeking for help going into those places where in each church they all believe they're just part, that one certain special cult or religion. Even throughout the Catholic Church and everything else, they've got their churches set up in every city, out in the countrysides, they've had churches set up. In each and every one of those churches, though it's supposed to be universal and all part of the great body, that church becomes in that area what it is the people that go there want it to be, and they're all one body. But yet you got the carpenters and the plumbers and the mayor and everybody else of that body. It's the same thing with Democrats and Republicans to me in these last days. Now we also have to understand that we don't fight flesh and blood. We brought that out in videos past, and I do want to bring up some things prior to one thing that I really want to get out. And it really has been tickling me here lately, though I've known it for a long time. Our King showed me this many years ago, but it's something that's not taught out in the churches, and that is a miracle that when people read the scriptures, for the most part, just because they don't live in the country, or some of them didn't watch Western movies or whatever, or go to rodeos, but instead they lived up in, the penthouses, or, in cities or towns where they didn't really have access to animals and such, so it wasn't part of their lifestyle. So a lot of times when anybody reads the scriptures and they read a certain thing about my King, they never see the miracle in it. And that's what I want to show. But I wanted to send a thank you to all of you, each and every one of you who come here to our King's channel. And here recently, there have been several people who have subscribed to our King's channel, and I do thank you for that. I don't make nothing off it, there's not a thing I make off this, except for hopefully family in our King and our Heavenly Father, through His righteous Son, of course. And on this video, the last one we put out, wherein it was 144,000 shall be perfect in you, do you know how to be perfect? Come see. And so far we have a concerted effort by Crystal, and I hope that I pronounce your name properly, dear, Pelos or Pelos. But anyway, Crystal, thank you very much for subscribing. I do want to keep in touch with you, young lady, and I can tell you're a lady because you look like one. The world today don't know how to define a woman or a lady or anything of the sort anymore. They have to put a trans in there, Now, I gotta say, in my vehicles, I did put a lot of transmissions into them, but that's the closest to trans, other than being a trans TikToker. But as y'all can see, and please take Crystal as an example, she put a playlist up and actually put our King's channel on the playlist right there. Can you see right here? And I do normally go to people's channel when they do subscribe because I like to see what they're into. Man, sorry, I have to announce here that I'm going to be cutting a lot of this video out. I did not realize it was 2 hours and 10 minutes long, this recording I just did. So I'm going to have to cut over an hour out of this. So if you notice from a spot or two where it may appear there was a jump, well, there probably is, especially toward the end when I say things like, when you look at this of what I mentioned earlier, well, what I mentioned earlier here may have been cut out. And I only did this because I love y'all enough that you really need to listen to the message. And if it gets too long, people don't want to hear it. So with that, let's get back to these marvelous words of life. And Crystal seems pretty much on the up and up and seeking But I took a look over here and it shows that so far there's not been any views on her channel. And of course, you know, Crystal, it's because you appear to believe in truth and are seeking it. You've got 10 subscribers. I've known other people that didn't have any content on their channel whatsoever, and they had thousands of subscribers. And of course, even here on our King's channel, as you could see, with your subscribing, and I'm amazed that I made it above 331, because I've counted off about 30 people subscribing in the last few months actually, but my subscribers always stayed at 328. It didn't even vary, but I'd see people that subscribed. I go check out their channel page, see if there's a way that I could thank them for doing so, and let them know I'm here for your comments. I'm here for you, because if you're seeking, I sure would like to help you find who our King is. And of course, a great shout out to Amadeus or Amadeus. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, my friend, but I'm going to call you Amma. How's that? And Amma had a question, and well, what I really wanted to point out about the most recent video is there was 42 views between Crystal's efforts and even adding this video onto a playlist so others could enjoy truth themselves. Between us concertedly is 42 views. And that's pretty remarkable, especially when you get down here to where it shows out of those 42 views, there's been 34 comments. And I find that amazing. And here with Amma, he asks me, and we've been conversating for a while, and he had asked me in a previous comment, he says, did you take the poison or did you pray Psalms 91 daily? And I wrote and I told him, you know, that I don't do repetitious prayers. You know, I'm not gonna play with a rosary and every bead you say a prayer over and over and over again. I was brought up as a Catholic, and when I went to confessions, the priest always made me say so many Our Fathers and Act of Contritions and Hail Marys and all these different things. And all you do is you just recite a man-made prayer that our Father detests because he doesn't like repetition. I mean, how would you like it if a friend came over and every time they came over, they sat there and they just said the same thing over and over and over, and not even being blasted out of their minds on some drug or drunk, but they just repeat things over and over and over, expecting you as their host that invited them in to be utmostly appreciative of their time being spent with you, repeating to you over and over and over and over the same things. You're probably already saying, man, I've almost heard enough from Al here, you know, he keeps saying the same thing over and over. Absolutely, the point I'm trying to get across is that we should not want these repetitious prayers being said. When I come before you, if anybody on YouTube just put the same video up over and over again. Now, if any of y'all watch things like I do with the Fail Army and Slapped Hammer, some of these other YouTube channels, where while you're sitting there watching a new episode, there's old videos you've already watched there, and then you got to fast forward because, you know, it's like, I already seen that. Why'd they put it in there? But if every time they posted it was the very same video over and over and over again, do you think that their subscriptions would rise up or go down? Well, see, that's why we're supposed to love our brother as ourselves, love our Father above all things. And if you love your Father above all things, love our King above all things, you would certainly not want to sit there and just repeat the same BS over and over again, thinking your many words are going to save you. And by the way, I went out, as soon as Sabbath had started, I went and I watched some videos from the Watchman. I usually watch his on Sabbath almost always. But as I've said many times before, I'll fast forward to the news because he brings out some of the best news. The other stuff that he preaches, I don't agree with. And as I've told you all many times before, anytime somebody wants money from their channel bringing forth truth, you know, they won't be doing so because they won't be buying and selling on the Sabbath or collecting money on the Sabbath, asking people for it or putting out in front of them that you want it. You know, And I mean no harm to anyone that does. It's just I'm telling you, you're not of the 144,000, nor are you of the children of the earth. Take Timothy P., for example. He brings out some of the highest quality videos I know of, and yet he doesn't ask anybody for a single cent. Nor will you find any on our King's channel here. But all of a sudden, I got the strange urge to go outside, and I haven't done this. I've been living in this place for like 3 or 4 years, something like that. Seems like an eternity already. But in my whole time here, winter and summer both, other than Passover, where I have to go out on the patio to cook or take care of the few plants I got there, I'm talking where nighttime comes and I actually went out and tried to look up in the sky for stars or whatever. And so I clicked off the TV on pause and I grabbed my cigarette and I went out in the yard and I went out barefoot because right after sunset the dew starts coming a little bit and not really soggy, just enough that you could feel the wetness on my bare feet to where I could charge with the alignment of the frequency of the earth, which is in bad shape, and that's why so many of us are also getting in bad shape too. The earth is vomiting us out. But I stood out there and I lit up my cigarette and I looked up in the sky, and just below the Big Dipper there was this reddish light that was about the size of the other stars. And there's a lot of lamps out there, so I had to put my hand up like this to block the light from the lamps. So I had to, I'll get rid of that pollution of the light they had there so I could see up higher. And I noticed this reddish, more like, I'd have to say reddish hue. I'm partially colorblind, but I'll have to say it was like a reddish hue. And it was just under the Big Dipper in my visuals, about that far down from where the handle comes, and it comes down about that far from was this reddish star that I saw. And I looked at it and I thought the color was pretty peculiar, and then it started to move. And I watched it for about 30 seconds, and I knew that it knew that I was going to be there. And so I looked up, I'm watching it, and it's coming in this sort of straight line. And I said, all right, I says, if you're of Father Yahweh and Yahshua Messiah, my King, is your ruler, and the light went out. And I'm looking at and I'm saying, then you're welcome. But otherwise, you don't interfere with my life. And I waited, and it was gone, okay? It didn't come back for as long as the rest of that cigarette. And that's the first time I've done that, ever. I've never gone out in my backyard here. It's the first time I had ever gone out in the yard, with shoes on or not, by myself just to smoke a cigarette. There have been a time or two that there was somebody that I was out there talking to and smoked a cigarette, or at times that I had walked around the sidewalk of the complex and smoked a cigarette, but never have I yet gone out there in the backyard that's full of light pollution and to be called to look up there and see this red object that first was stationary, then started moving. But I've seen these things my whole life, so it's nothing really much on me. It's just that I test and try the spirits. And I know they were looking at me because there's no reason I should have been out there in the yard. And even so, I would have had no reason to go out there, okay? On my own, I don't do it. I never have. So it was either introduced to me by spirits, and we don't fight flesh and blood. And these spirits causing an urge, whether it's a righteous spirit or a wicked and evil spirit, don't know. But what I was compelled to do didn't go against the give or take 613 laws that define how to keep the 10 commandments, which will issue you into the kingdom, for everlasting life. But if you break these things, you got no hope to even going to heaven. Nobody's going to heaven. We will go to the kingdom that'll be sitting in the clouds before too long for the wedding supper, that this number no man can count will be attending as witnesses of this marriage to the King, which I believe Father Abraham and Moshe and everybody else is going to be part of that bride. But the number no man can count, the ones that will come later, those will be the witnesses. And I believe the children of the earth in these last days will be more like the maids of honor, if that's how you want to take a look at it, to where they're not the bride, but they're there to represent the bride. They're the closest ones to protect the bride until the bride is brought under the headship of the husband. And of course, this is all spiritual understanding, has nothing to do with physical life, okay? Doesn't mean that I'm going to become gay, okay? And I'm not, and I never had feelings to be so. But man, the world has been going crazy, hasn't it? I mean, seriously, if you look at videos as much as I do, of course, if you're not into news or anything of that sort, maybe you don't even notice these things that are changing around us, where the news is really concentrating on promoting sin, making it repetitious in a way that you should find it acceptable, okay? And we're going to get into that because we didn't have the time in the last video. That has 42 views, as you've seen up here, where Alma had asked a question. Well, I really didn't cut much of anything out of there from there, but I'm going to have to, from here, I'm going to cut out over an hour, I think. Just cut it right out. If y'all are interested in what gets cut out, I could take the time and probably put it up in a couple segments. But I'm really trying to keep these down as short as possible, and it's difficult. Because as I'm editing, it's like, man, I can't cut that. I can't cut that. So I'm just going to have to stop right here and cut out over an hour and get back to the conversation what I was having about Alma, and we'll finish up with there. And it's stated, if y'all want to hear what was being stated in the parts that were cut out, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm not going to worry about it either. So back to Alma. So anyway, interjecting about what I had seen up there and it blinking out when I gave it the spiritual test, which we hope to get into here as well for you, Alma, and all other new subscribers or someone that is allowed to come to our King's channel. Please understand, you can't even come here to hear these things unless our King is allowed it, okay? You can't come here and listen to this channel spiritually as everybody else in the whole earth of the world can go to all the channels of those of the world. This one is not of this world, though it's available to the world. Only certain ones are allowed to even click on the play button to watch this video, let alone to go back and watch any of the others. Satan doesn't like to lose anybody. When you click the play button, Satan is threatened. And Satan knows exactly what the game is, okay? Of course, Satan doesn't at all look like this fella here, but I think this guy might be a Christian. I do not know. He's from the Babylon Bee channel. It's got over 828,000 video views on here. But I'm thinking the only way this fella could actually depict the character of Satan, that he is doing up there, he's got to have some sort of understanding of morality. Okay, that's what I had seen when he brought this out, this skit, whoever the actor is there. I'm thinking he could be a Christian or a Catholic or some other of the religions that actually try to have a little morality within the ranks of their homes on every corner or whatever, where the body of that faith, that belief, congregate together during their worship services of Baal and El and Elohim and Lord and God and the Jesus, asking people to put their money in the collection plate while they feed them with lies. The character played here in this appears, though trying to depict Satan herself, which today, if you accept all society, should be dressed as this fellow, knowing that Satan truly is, though, a female. Also known as the Queen of Heaven, okay? And there's plenty of queens today. And since sin got into the world, it's been a thing that's always been with mankind. Not immediately at the creation of mankind, but after a while when the children start rebelling and such, and they start practicing things that are not right, to where in their DNA there is really no objection to a practice taking place that you've been brought up in. When I was brought up, the world was a whole lot different than it is today. And I feel so sorry for those of the world. But before too long, there's going to be Holy Spirit poured out on all flesh. I still hear these people out there wanting donations off their channels, telling people that they got to get the message out to every nation and every tongue. Give me your money. Where Scripture says that our Holy King, Yeshua, and some call him Yeshua or Yehoshua or Yehoshuhua or whatever, just like with the F word today, with Fail Army or so many other places. I mean, they're out there in a motorcycle race. F Joe Biden, boom, 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 boom. F Joe Biden. It's an everyday commonplace thing. They had it right on news stations, everything. Everybody's saying it, where at one time it was taboo, but now through practicing of it, feeling awful the first time you steal a candy bar, but then the more you do it, the more confident you feel, and you don't have almost any of those bad feelings the first time you did what you knew was wrong. And then you start planning it the next time. Yeah, let's go to the store and we'll steal 3 Snicker bars and 3 Musketeers. And then you just go down and do it like you're saying hi and bye or whatever. Because at that time, the sin has become fully birthed. And sometimes it takes many years to get the morality of the world to go even deeper into disobedience, where everybody in the crowd just follows. And it's these spirits urging them to do it. And these people follow because they don't have the give or take 613 laws. I've said it 1,000 times, I'm certain. There's no exaggerated in that. Point, that is 613 laws. If you keep those that pertain to you, you and I will be the greatest brothers and sisters ever been. In fact, Scripture says you'll know us in the last days, those who are disciples of Messiah, by the love we have toward one another. Very few people know what love is. I want you to know here, this is in 2nd Yachanan or 2nd John. I've asked you many times and you haven't caught the bait, so this time I'm going to hit you with the arrow, okay? Because I put the bait out there, and I've told you many times that you don't know my king, but I want you to meet him, and you never took the bait to ask anything further, though I've said it a few times. Now I'm going to explain to you how you can come to know my king. And this was put out by one of the disciples of my king. This is what he understood long after Messiah already laid his life down and went to heaven with our Father, where no other man is going to go. Messiah said, where I go, you cannot come. He's not a liar. But all the Catholics and all the religions of the world think, some, believe it enough, they'll strap on bombs and go out and blow himself up and kill women and children and really poop the bed everywhere because he was promised he's going to get like 26 virgins or something. I laughed about that first time I heard it too, because it's like, well, I don't know of any virgin that's probably over the age of 3 on the earth today, unless their parents really know something about the commandments that you're not to do such things and you're supposed to actually protect your children, and they're supposed to be virgins when they get married. But the world already came away from most of that by the time I was born, still practicing a lot of it. Ever heard of shotgun marriage? Just in case. I got someone pregnant, they ain't get to the doctor that's practiced enough that he's fully demon possessed and enjoying his job to abort material that ends up as, cosmetics for the face or many of the Jabberwocky things, that's produced by pharmakia, the sorcerers, and why I don't think people should get into all that sort of stuff. And if you got a way out, like I found in nattokinase, which I had brought up before, you thought I forgot? Well, I did, but our gang brought it back. In order to get off the warfarin, I started using nattokinase. It is a blood thinner that's from a fermented soybean, okay? And though I don't like soy, it's the ferment we're after, and they harvest the nattokinase from the fermented soy, and I don't have to take warfarin, and I haven't died as the sorcerers tried to put on me. But anyway, here in verse 4 of 2nd Yachanan, chapter 1, verse 4 says, I rejoice greatly that I have found some of your children walking in truth, because the commandment is we are to teach our children. We're to teach those that are around us of the laws and the commandments when we walk down the roads, when we rise up, when we're at the table, when we're in bed. We should always be speaking of these things. It should always be in our mouths. And it's hard to do in a world like today. And here Al-Yahnai saying he was rejoicing when he seen that some of their children, some of them was walking in the truth as we receive commandment from the Father. He says, and now I plead with you, lady, not as though I wrote a new commandment to you. No, there were this give or take 613 laws that define how everyone is to keep the 10 commandments. Everyone cannot keep all of the give or take 613 laws. My king did not keep all 613 laws. He was not a menstruous woman, which is how they want to define what a woman is today. Someone who menstruates. Well, I don't need any other jazz going on in my life. I'm not going to become insane. I'm already sane, knowing morally what is right and wrong, and I'm not going to convert my entire life over to their nonsense. If you've seen any of it taking place in the videos, like where I showed Odin's man or Odin's men, and I discovered I'm a trans TikTok and offered him answer for a video or few that I had watched of his, and these people just going nuts. These are the devils influencing them to do things, just like when I ran out in the yard earlier tonight. But please pay attention here, Amma, and anyone else that's new that hasn't seen any other video except for this one, because I make statements similar in most every one, and I tell everyone I love you, that I love you in our King's love, and I wouldn't even know love unless he showed me what it was. And I'm trying to show you what our King showed me, so please pay close attention here. And now I plead with you, lady, not as though I wrote a new commandment to you, but that which we have had from the beginning. And what is that? That we love one another. Now please, everybody, pay so close attention to this. The commandment is that we love one another. That's what everything in the 613 laws is to bring us to. The 10 commandments means that you love one another if you keep them. Wars caused by only something outside of the laws and commandments. And here Al-Yahnai boils it down and condenses it to show you that he's pleading with you, guys and gals, not as though it's a new commandment, but one you had from the beginning. You've been born into this commandment that we love one another. Christians are all, oh, well, I got the love of Jesus. Well, no, even the Jesus that's portrayed, it says up here in verse 3, it says, Father from the Lord Jesus, the Christos, the Son of Father in truth and love. Well, if you claim that you're of this Jesus, the Christos, and you want to quote these things, well, the thing is, you have no understanding of what that love is. But Al-Yahnai knew this, and he's defining this for the 144,000. When they read these scriptures, they'd see it and understand that the world teaches something totally different because they're all deceived. There's no argument here from now on. Nobody can argue this point. Here in 2 Al-Yahnai 1 verse 6, it says, this is love. This is love. This is the love of that Jesus Christ that none of the preachers of this world preach. This is the love of that Messiah that is the black sheep. Okay, right now, this verse is the black sheep of their family dwellings on every church corner there, wherever they're set up, where all their family members come together. They've boycotted since these churches began the truth that's clearly seen in the scriptures. If you could only see it. And you're on our King's channel, so there's no excuse why you can't. If you came this far into the video, it says, this is love. What is love? This is it, that we walk according to his commandments. And this is the commandment that as you have heard from the beginning of what? That you're to keep them. You're to live by the every living word. And if you heard that and you started shucking some of these devils away from you so that you could start seeing, hearing, and practicing that you're to live by the every living word, then that's when in the beginning of your walk now, you heard it. That you're to keep the every living word. You're to keep them commandments and the laws so you can keep the commandments, and you're to walk as our King walked. He said in Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, he says, don't even think that I came to do away with the law or the prophets. All the churches out there want to talk about the prophets. Some of them talking about rapture and everything because they want to believe the prophets who never talked about rapture in the way they want to believe it. They haven't heard the truth yet. They've had no beginning. But when you understand and you're truly seeking and led here to our King's channel maybe, or someone else that speaks a word of truth, a babe, the only difference is you're on our King's channel is right now it's a permanent thing. You can come here all the time, find answers. But this is the commandment, this love that you're to have for one another, that you walk according to his commandments. And this is the commandment that as you have heard from right now, if it's right now that you heard you're supposed to, you should walk in it. And then it says, for many deceivers have gone out into the world who do not confess that Yahshua or Yehoshua came in the flesh. Yeah, he wasn't on a cloud up in heaven strumming a harp for a gazillion years before Father Yahweh said, Yahshua, jump down into Mary's womb. No. Yahshua was known of in the plan, and our Father knew everything he was going to do because he said it. And it was written down for men to see. And everything that's going to take place in these end days is the same. We're going to see the fulfilling of all the scriptures. And my friends, please understand, this is how you come to know my King. This is how I know if you know him, my friend. And Crystal and everybody else, Timothy P., go check his channel out. You'll see how those who know our King act and in what they proclaim and what they say and what they do. We're out there on display for everybody, but not many can see us. That's why take a look at the views on these videos and on Timothy P's channel as well. But anyway, please, I'm asking you to answer this honestly. Here in 1 Yachanan chapter 2 verse 3 it says, now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. Did you see that, Amma? If you keep the commandments that I'm telling you you must keep, because the scriptures tell me, and I know it's true, we must keep the commandments if we want to know him. Just because you start keeping the Sabbath or you stop stealing candy bars or whatever, not saying that you are, but when you first start to believe, there's many more things you're doing that are sinful than the one that you first recognize. And so if you discover you shouldn't steal a candy bar, so you stop now because you just had your beginning, don't mean that you know Messiah. It doesn't mean that you've been forgiven and washed by his blood yet. It takes time. And the only way you know him is if you keep all of his commandments, all of his laws that pertain to you. If you keep them, then you know him. If you just find out learning right now, well, you don't know him. It's like the first time you went over a friend's house that their mom and dad was there, and you're 8 or 9 years old running in with a neighbor boy or girl. You don't know what to expect from them when you first enter into their house. Well, it's the same here. You still don't know them until you got to the point where they show great interest and they ain't telling you how they're going to slap you on the head if you don't stop walking on the couch. You should know the rules already before you go in the house, not to jump on the couch, not to throw rocks through the windows. And it says, now by this we know that we know Messiah, if we keep his commandments. Now get this, Amma. This should make a beginning for you. He who says that I know him, and you've told me many times about the Jesus, and told me how I should worship the Jesus. And I keep telling you, no, I'm going to worship Yahshua. Worship means to obey. And here in verse 4 it says, he who says I know him and does not keep his commandments. If you're not keeping the feasts of Father Yahweh, if you're not keeping the seventh day Sabbath, if you're eating pork or the unclean thing, or you're telling lies, or keeping Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or Christmas and Esther or Easter, and if you're doing any of those things, having birthday parties and blowing out the candles for the smoke to blow your secret prayers up to the gods, or the other things of witchcraft that take place during those days. Only twice birthdays are mentioned in Scripture, once with Pharaoh and once with Herod. Both times were human sacrifice. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar. Do y'all see this? Not just you, Am. I'm not picking on you. I love you, man. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend this time with you. Hoping you'll see. And one day I hope that you'll be laughing about this, because I know right now feels like you got this thorn stuck in your heart, and it's like, dang, that hurts. Because here I'm telling Al-Yahnai that we ain't to keep his laws. And here you got one of the disciples of Messiah after the death of Messiah, who never came to change any of the laws or commandments. He said not to even think it, but that's what the Catholics and everyone else believe. And it says, he who says, I know him, I know the Jesus, I know Yeshua, I know Yeshua, I know Yehoshua, I know Yehoshua, Shua, or whatever you put on there, and you are keeping some of the commandments in the little groups that y'all have. Well, no, then the little groups you have, there ain't nobody from the 144,000 in there. And you're certainly not going to find 2 or 3 of them in the same building together today. We're waiting for the gathering where there'll be 144,000 of us together. And I only know of maybe 2 out of all my other 143,999 brothers out there. I know of hopefully 2. And I've been searching for over 40 years, okay? But he who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. And for that reason, it's why most people cannot see the great miracle that took place here in Luke chapter 19, verse 28. And I'll tell you, you have to put on my glasses to be able to see this, but you got to take off your preacher's glasses first. And I'm sure most everybody's familiar with this story, even atheists. And you're one of those that have access to the scriptures, or around people that you might have heard news or something. You've probably heard of this story, Luke 19:28, and it says, when he had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, when he drew near Bethphage, or Phage, and Brittany, and at the mountain called Olivet, that he sent 2 of his disciples. He always sent them out in 2s, except for the one time where he told Judas not Iscariot to hurry up and go, and the other disciples should have caught on that. But Judas was sent out alone, and all the other disciples thought, well, maybe he's preparing for the Passover. Not even realizing that Messiah wasn't killed on the Passover. He was killed before it. And there were those that didn't even enter into the praetorium where they were suffering my king, and others had actually been put to death there and everything. They wouldn't even go inside the praetorium because it was considered unclean. Oh man, was you expecting it to end so abruptly? Well, I had to. I mean, it was over 2 hours long, the original recording, and I cut out almost an hour of it. There's still like 38 minutes or so of unedited version for part 2 that I'm going to get right to doing, and it took a little over 12 hours, give or take, to do the recording and the editing of this part 1. But I'm going to get right on part 2 here, and hopefully get it out today as well. Okay, so be ready for part 2. I do love you all immensely. Let's keep each other in our prayers. Times are going to get tough. They are already tough, but nothing have you seen from this first of the birthing pains, okay, as to how it's going to get here shortly. The spirits are working overtime. They're doing their best to sear the people's conscience that's out there in the world. The Holy Spirit's going to be poured out on all flesh before too long, and everyone will be able to hear the truth as you do right now. I hope that you do anyway. Get ready for part 2. Bye.